Then something moved, no more than a shadow, at the corner where the carpet met the stairwell. It wasn't a person's silhouette exactly. It was a shape breathing away from me, small enough to let me imagine it as a hallway cleaner, too quick for me to catch. By the time I stepped out to look, it had retreated around the bend. When I went down to the front desk, the young clerk avoided eye contact like he'd swallowed a secret. He said, "We don't do that," and then, when I insisted, told me no one had been on my floor since evening. They offered to move me. They offered to refund the night. An older woman behind the desk, later I learned she was a manager, finally agreed to let me inspect the room with a supervisor. They unlocked the door and walked me in, but the place looked normal. Except the window latch. It was bent, not broken in a dramatic way, just deformed enough that it would not have secured the sash properly. You could tell by the scrape mark that someone had forced it the way you force a stubborn jar. "Could have been that," the manager said, voice low. "Maybe maintenance?" That word felt like a buffer. I filed the fact away. The latch bent, notes under the door, a shadow in the hall. I checked out at 3 in the morning. I didn't sleep on the drive. I pulled into another hotel, one with newer carpets and a friendly night clerk who didn't look at me like I'd brought trouble. I slept with the TV on and the deadbolt engaged, and woke to sunlight thick on my face, but the unease didn't lift. I still picture the folded paper sliding under the crack like a furtive animal. Months later, I drive by that exit and my stomach tightens. I never went back. If you want more collections like this, true hotel stories that make you second-guess the checkout, hit like and subscribe. I'll keep bringing them. 2. The Key, Virginia. That night, I was bone-tired. I'd been on the road for hours, and the motel off the interstate promised a bed and a shower, and nothing else. The room looked hurriedly tidied, towels folded on the counter, the minibar untouched. But when I tossed my duffel on the floor, I noticed the top of the dresser slightly askew, like someone had rifled through the drawers and then tried to put things back in a hurry. It could have been housekeeping. It could have been me zoning out in a hurry. I told myself not to worry. Sometime after midnight, I woke to the sound of a knob turning. At first it was faint, a soft scrape and the tiny click of metal, and I thought someone was trying their key down the hall. Then it stopped. Silence. I held my breath until my lungs ached, as if the lack of breathing could baton off whatever danger was outside. I could hear the radiator humming. The building settled. I drifted back toward sleep in a tight, watchful way. Then the sound again, closer this time, a hand across metal, the scrape of a latch.
And a voice, the kind of voice you tell yourself is a mail carrier or a late-night maintenance man. "Housekeeping," it called softly. A pause. "Housekeeping," it called again, a little louder, as if testing to see if someone was home. When I cracked the door a few inches and looked through the peephole, there was no one standing there. The hallway was dark. My bag zipped open. The small travel pouch I keep in my feet had been unzipped. A couple of personal things were scattered on the bed. At first I thought maybe I'd left the pouch like that. Then I remembered doing a quick shut before collapsing. A cold rage rose up, but so did the immediate, sharper panic. Someone had been in my room. I went down to the lobby and told them. They listened. The night clerk's face shifted in ways I've learned to read from years on the road. Detached curiosity, the polite distance of hospitality. "We'll check," he said. He promised they'd review the cameras, call me if they found anything. I asked the police to be called. They came, took my statements, and said they would watch the footage. Later, the on-duty officer showed me the surveillance. A large man appears on camera in the hallway around midnight. He moves deliberately, keys in hand. The footage caught him standing in front of my door at least 3 times, sliding a key into the lock and entering. The image was grainy, the man's face not clear, but the one unmistakable detail was the way he handled a key that was not the single-room key the desk issued me. The officer said the footage indicated the man had access to a key that opened multiple doors. He looked like he knew what he was doing, the cop said, and then they used a phrase the desk later repeated. He took a master key. The hotel, when I spoke to management, described it as an allegedly stolen key. They refunded my night and promised an investigation. They used the word alleged often, as if distance could erase the image on that grainy screen. That night I slept in my car. It was the worst kind of refuge. Metallic seats, the smell of starch and cold, every unfamiliar noise outside magnified into potential threat. The theft felt less like the taking of things and more like the violation of the room's one job, to keep me private. I called my lawyer the next week to ask about pressing charges, but the footage only showed a man, not a face, not a name. The hotel insisted they'd hand over anything the police requested. In the end, I let it go, but not because I forgave it. It was too small to fight and too large to forget. I still check locks twice. I drag the deadbolt into place and tap the peephole like it's a small, impotent talisman. The room may have been safe enough before, but now I travel with a new ledger in my head. Who has keys? Who answers when someone calls housekeeping? Trust can be lost in a single key turn. 3. The Breath and the Cart, New Jersey. I stayed at a small roadside hotel after a long day hiking.
The area was quiet, the kind of place where the biggest nightlife was the sound of crickets and the occasional truck. The lobby clerk told me that housekeeping had been light all week, slow season, she said, so they were running on a skeleton crew. The building felt emptier than the sheets suggested, fewer footsteps in the hall, fewer doors opening and closing. I unpacked, closed the closet door behind me, and slept. In the middle of the night, I woke to a sound that is impossible to describe without making you imagine someone breathing through a vent. It was right by the closet, a tight, measured inhale and exhale, like a person curled up behind the hangers. I rolled over and listened with the intensity of someone trying to pin a fly to the wall. The closet door had been ajar when I fell asleep. Now it was partially closed, as if someone had pushed it in and then left it between open and shut. The hangers had moved. For a moment, my rational brain supplied explanations, a draft, the building settling, but the breath continued, quiet, so close I could see the hair on my arm move with it. I sat up. The breathing stopped. I pressed my ear to the door and heard nothing but the steady hum of the HVAC. I considered calling the desk, but part of me, tinged with shame, thought maybe I'd imagined it. I told myself I'd check the door and go back to sleep. I reached for my phone, thumbed on the light, and peeked through the peephole. The hallway was empty. I opened the door cautiously and looked down the corridor. No carts, no maintenance workers, just the thick hotel hush. I moved rooms at dawn. The next day, when I went to settle the bill, I asked if anyone had been working that night. The clerk's expression changed. "No," she said, "we actually haven't had a housekeeper out here for a week. Our regular girl called in and didn't come back on schedule." She explained they were short of staff because of a staffing shuffle. I felt the world tilt a little. Later that afternoon, as I was gathering my things, I heard wheels, soft, a gentle roll. It crept along outside like a small animal. The sound grew and passed my closed door, but there was no one visible through the peephole. Then a light palm pressed against the door, just a gentle touch, as if someone were testing the barrier for response. I froze, breath shallow and fast, and then the hand moved away. I opened the door so quickly my pulse hit my throat, and the hallway was empty again. No cart parked outside, no one in sight. When I told the clerk what I heard, she only shrugged and said she didn't understand either. Maybe maintenance, she offered weakly, but she had already told me they had no staff on that night. The implication was worse.
If no one from the hotel could explain the sounds and touches at my door, then someone else must have been living in the seams of the building. Someone could be hiding inside the walls, behind the service closets, under the stairs. I left at dawn, my breakfast cold and untouched. My stomach churned for days. It wasn't just that someone had been close enough to breathe near my clothes. It was that the staff's explanation was a hollow thing. The building had places people could hide, the keys were loose in the system, the cart could roll by itself with a push from someone who had learned the timing. I don't know which thought is worse, that a person used those tactics to live inside a hotel without anyone noticing, or that something else used them and learned to mimic human touches. 4. The House Person's Encounter, Summer 2023, Employee. I worked nights as a house person that summer, cleaning communal areas, keeping the pool tidy, making sure the storage closet didn't swallow the keys. Brianna worked the front desk. She was new and quiet, still learning the faces and where the extra towels were kept. Most nights were routine: towels, trash, a quick check of room 324, where we often had recurring requests. That night, though, the air felt off from the start. It was after midnight when someone on the desk, Brianna, phoned up to say the lifesaver phone buzzed. The lifesaver had been knocked into the deep end. She said it with a voice that sounded like someone recounting something small and impossible. There were no guests at the pool. Nobody was supposed to be down there. I went to check because even simple things like that become my job. The pool was moonlit and still. The lifesaver hung from its hook like a punctuation mark. Then, suddenly, it was in the water, floating and bobbing as if someone had tossed it in just to see the ripple. No wet footprints, no towels, nothing. I pulled it in with the pole and felt the hair on my arms bristle from cold that seemed to come from the water and not the air. Later that night, I was sent to room 324 to fix a running toilet. A guest was due to check in the next day, and maintenance wanted it quieted. I had my toolbox and the list, and I told Brianna I'd be quick. Room 324 was a corner room, the kind with an awkward light switch and a bathroom with cheap tile. I stepped in, and the temperature dropped. It was sudden, like stepping into a doorway between seasons. My breath fogged, then stopped fogging because the air felt denser, as if it absorbed the warmth from my lungs. I worked on the toilet for a while and heard a thud outside the bathroom wall. Not pipes, not a loose vent. A deep, heavy thump that came from the corner of the room. It felt like something was shifting its weight. I told myself it was maintenance in another unit, that the old building creaked like any old building. Then I saw it. In the corner opposite the bed stood a shape that did not belong in any descriptor I had used for people. It was tall and contained no detail, no face, no limbs, just a dark surface where features should be. I do not mean a shadow. I mean something that absorbed light the way a hole absorbs color. It was featureless.
It was a dark, human-shaped thing that did not have skin or hair or clothing. It simply was. The hair on my arms went rigid. The tool in my hand felt heavy and foreign. It moved, not with steps, but with presence, shifting sideways, the way a piece of furniture might slide in a trimmer. I bolted. I dropped the wrench by the door and ran out into the hallway with that cold clinging to me like damp clothing. I heard my heart beating in my ears. I put my back against the wall and slid down until I was sitting on cool tile, gasping. I called Brianna at the desk and told her to come up. She climbed the stairs like someone caught between disbelief and concern. When she opened the door, she stopped dead. She'd seen something, maybe not the same thing I had, but enough to change the angle of her mouth. She told me later she'd felt a pressure against the front desk, like someone leaning on the counter, though no one was there. She'd also seen the pool report in the log. She remembered the lifesaver and the way it hit the water without a hand in sight. The two events, she said, felt eerily linked.
After that night, I quit my shift early. I told the manager I had a family emergency. I told Brianna I couldn't do nights anymore. I didn't mention the black shape. I couldn't find the words that would sound sane. I walked off the property with a toolbox, feeling like it had been glued to my hand. We never had another clear incident like that while I worked there, but the pool log entry and the hush at the front desk stayed with me. Sometimes I still dream the shape in corners. I told a friend about it once, and she asked if it was a trick of sleep deprivation. Maybe, but I know the weight of that cold, the way it pressed on me like a palm. It wasn't human. I can say that with the certainty of someone who saw something not made of flesh. They were different nights, different rooms, different people. One person got notes slid under a door in the exact hour when someone should be sleeping. Another watched a key open a door that should have been locked. One person heard breathing in a closet, and another watched a darkness stand in the corner of a room. What binds them is not a single explanation, but the same fracture of safety that hotels promise and sometimes fail to keep. I don't tell these stories to scare travelers into never leaving their homes. Hotels are workhorses of travel. They do their job most nights. But there is a truth here about being anonymous in a building. Anonymity can shelter kindness, but it can also hide long shadows. Locks can be bypassed, staff can be missing, and sometimes the things that unsettle us don't have a neat explanation. If you've stayed somewhere and felt watched, or woke to a sound that didn't belong, share it in the comments. Tell your story. I read them all. And if you want more true accounts like these, hotel nights that didn't stay quiet, subscribe for the next set.
Travel safe and trust that small instincts matter. If something feels wrong in a room, it probably is.